I picked up Giles Gus on the edge of the beach. At that time, he was framed by his enemies and fell off the yacht. I don't know how long I drifted in the sea. All that's left is a pair of tattered panties. I have lived in a fishing village for many years, and all the young people have gone to the city to work, and few of the rest are handsome, especially like Giles Gus, who is handsome out of the sky, with sword eyebrows and starry eyes, and 8-pack abs that are full of elasticity. It made me swallow my uncontentious saliva. With my eyes half closed, I wiped his mud-stained body, from pectorals, abs, to biceps, and all the way down. It's huge. This kid must have eaten well. Just as I was about to put on the pants I had borrowed from the village chief's son, he looked at me with a pair of ignorant eyes. Sister, hungry, rice. I was stunned. Did you pick up a fool? However, it doesn't matter if you're so handsome, whether you're stupid or not. I picked up the kitchen knife, clicked twice to kill the fresh sorry, threw in the yellow ginger and green shallots, and then served it with sweet shao wine, and steamed it directly on top of the rice. After a while, the small room was full of fragrance. The fish scales that have not been scraped off are steamed and then turned into oil. I held the head of the fish with chopsticks, lifted it and shook it. The bones and flesh were easily separated, and then I poured a spoonful of refined hot lard, which made Giles Gus' mouth water. He grabbed his chopsticks and couldn't wait to take a piece of fatty and delicate fish meat into his mouth, feeling the fish fat in the fish skin, which quietly penetrated into the fragrance of the fish. Hey, eat slowly. He devoured his food, like a starving ghost who had never eaten in 3 lifetimes. I didn't even let go of the crispy fish bones that I took off, fried them in the pan, and sprinkled them with salt and pepper. If you eat so badly, I'll call you a little wolf in the future. Well, I'm my sister's little wolf. At that time, I didn't know that the man in front of me was the most perceptive person in the shopping mall, is also a strong affinity for himself, and he is the king of fishing village children, who attracts people. The people of the fishing village rely on the sea to eat the sea. Before going fishing, fishermen like to come to my noodle restaurant for a bowl of noodle soup. The noodle soup I make is full of ingredients. The toppings are even more abundant, and the familiar villagers don't need to look at the menu, shout, and consciously help set up the tables and chairs and sit down. There are also people from farther towns who drive early in the morning just to taste the rumored fish noodles with fresh eyebrows. It's been a busy half of the morning. Seeing Giles Gus watching, I dissembled a herring fish, fried it on a fierce fire, and then accompanied it with ginger and green onions, poured rice wine to remove the fish, and added rock sugar to enhance the freshness. After a while, the fried fish that had absorbed enough soup came out of the pot and covered it with a full cover of the soup noodles. He squatted on the ground, using the small stool as a table, sucking the noodles without hesitating the image, and did not even let go of the hot soup. Poor child. I thought of the torn panties that hung on hemp rope and fluttered in the wind like leg hair. Looking at Giles Gus' gluttonous cat again, he suddenly felt a little distressed. Looks so handsome, but he hasn't even eaten anything delicious. It's pitiful. In a short time, he ate a large bowl of noodles and burped contentedly. Sister, I'm full. Do I need help with the work? It's a coming of the way. I was satisfied to let Giles Gus do the dishes. However, when he accidentally broke the bowl for the 3rd time, I tugged at the corners of my mouth. Can you swim? Why don't you go to sea with the village chief? Giles Gus is a bit unlucky. When you go out to sea, the sun is shining, but within 2 hours, dark clouds rose from the sea, and the wind was fierce. The grandson of the village chief was naughty, hid in the cabin and secretly followed out to sea, and accidentally fell into the sea. The village chief rushed to help, but Giles Gus reacted faster and plunged headlong into the water. He was very good at water, and he protected the choking child in his arms, and then climbed onto the lifeboat thrown down by the village chief. Everyone returned home safely. The village chief, carrying a large bucket of seafood, sent back the soaked Giles Gus with a grateful face. Eartha, I laughed at you for being stupid at first, picking up a stinky boy from an unknown source, and paying for him to treat his injuries like a big wrong. It's the old man's shallow knowledge. If there is no your little wolf today, my little grandchild will be afraid of disappearing. Giles Gus licked his lips as he pointed to the basket of freshly caught seafood with sparkling eyes. Sister, shrimp, The little wolf wants to eat shrimp. I turned and went into the kitchen. The wonderful sound of stir-frying lingers in the ears, the fresh fragrance of the garlic paste, and the strong fragrance of soy sauce. Who is not confused when you see it? Giles Gus ate 3 pounds in one go, and his stomach was swollen. In the middle of the night, a tall figure stood beside my bed, shaking my arm vigorously. Belly, it hurts. It's over. Accumulated food. I had to let Giles Gus crawl into bed, half asleep, and rub his stomach for him. He squinted his eyes and nestled at my feet like a big cat, rubbing and rubbing. My hands went all the way up and all the way down. Giles Gus looked up at me, his eyes slightly red, and there was an indescribable lust in them. I was momentarily embarrassed, but his angular face has the word hook written directly on it. Pity me for living 23 years and never touching a man. Put your heart sideways, on the chest of the obedient little wolf. Drank for the longest night. Woo! How can the taste of pectoral muscles be more fragrant than the fish noodles I made? Some things, with a beginning, can't be stopped. During the day, Giles Gus eats mine. In the evening, I ate Giles Gus. He seemed to enjoy it so much that he took the initiative to hold the pillow on my bed every night. He loves cleanliness very much, and every time he washes his body fragrantly, and his hair is so refreshing. This guy has super good physical strength. I have to get up very early every day to drink that soup and go to bed early. Giles Gus took the initiative to prepare the soup for me, in order to do that, just to let me sleep for 2 more hours. It feels so good to have someone to help. I feel very happy in my heart, and I often bury myself in his arms, pinching the abdominal muscles of Q bombs. Hey, the best in the world. It's okay to be stupid. Spring goes and winter comes. Giles Gus has been living in my cottage for almost a year. In the winter, I began to need the rice balls. Giles Gus couldn't wait to take a bite, and he was so hot that he didn't want to spit it out. What's the hurry? It's not like I've finished this meal, and I don't have to eat the next meal. He was stunned. I reached out to wipe the soup from Giles Gus' mouth, and he obediently leaned over and was at my mercy, like an obedient kitten. Ever since my mom and dad drowned in the sea, there was no one to spend the new year with me. I took Giles Gus' hands, and put them to my lips and sighed. Why is it so cold? Is it that the clothes are too thin and the sea breeze is too strong to stand it? He shook his head and reached out to take me into his arms. Hug, so it won't be cold. Our little wolf is too coquettish. Is it okay to spend the new year with my sister for the rest of my life in the future? My sister will make you rice balls every year. It was a long time before I heard the muffled grunt of Giles Gus overhead. Good. I was thinking about closing my business for a few days, and secretly went to the county market to buy him a down jacket as a surprise. But as soon as he returned to the village, he saw the village chief hurrying over. Eartha, why don't you answer the phone? Something big is wrong. Oh, and the phone is dead. Just now, there were people from the land, sea and air, and the big plane kept circling in the open space near your house, and dozens of men in black broke into your house, and took the little wolf away. What? My head was buzzing. The village chief couldn't wait to show me the photos. A large group of people in black were all wearing sunglasses. All of them were tall, and they were very difficult to mess with. However, when Giles Gus appeared with a calm and cold face, that was completely different from the previous ones, they all bowed their heads respectfully. The sea breeze ripples, and the dark night leaves a loneliness. I returned to the dead hut, and found a note on the bed, on which a line of words was written in strong words. Sister, I was captured by the villain. Can you come and rob the marriage? See the last 2 words. I blushed. Isn't his younger brother too handsome? And he is taken by a rich woman, and wants to be a little white face. Don't blame me for being cranky. Every time I ride my beloved little electric donkey, I take the little wolf to the town to buy something. Many little girls came to ask for calls with red faces, but he refused indifferently. In contrast, the village chief was much more nervous than me. The man in black seems to be from Hong Kong City, and the little wolf is good looking. So wasn't he arrested and sold? I stiffened. I remembered those nights just now, and the big hot palm of the little wolf stroked my thin waist from behind, and gently kneaded it. After sweating hotly, his eyes were wet and his voice was hoarse. Sister, never leave the little wolf. Okay. He was as well behaved as the most docile puppy in the world, holding me tightly for fear of being abandoned. But in the end, I was the one who cried miserably and begged for mercy. Hey, Eartha, why is your face so red? The old village chief's voice brought me back to reality. I'm a little embarrassed. The little wolf is obedient to me, and his mind is as clear as a spring, like a bright moon in the sky, and he can't be allowed to fall into the hands of bad people. I turned around and went back to my room to pack my bags. Longton Tiger's Den. Also have to break through. On the day I arrived in Port City, it was pouring rain. The cold wind passed through me, and I couldn't help but shiver. Looking at the bustling flow of people, my mind went blank. Where to look for the wolf cubs? The sound of gossip sounded in my ears. It's a shame that for half a year, the little wolf has been pestering me to watch the Hong Kong City program, and I understand it. The prince of the Gus family has been missing for a year, and he has finally been found. This is the great lord. Both of his parents died at an early age, and he fought his way out of his uncles and uncles, expanding the territory of the Gus family several times. If you don't make too many enemies, you won't be chased and killed in the sea. Now it's okay. Giles Gus is back, and the marriage contract with the eldest lady in the Hong Kong circle should be fulfilled soon. I listened blankly. The prince of the Gus family is really lucky. He is also overboard, and once he comes back, he will be rich and rich. Poor my little wolf. He fell into the sea and soaked his brain into the water, and when he fished ashore, he only had a pair of pants on his body, which were still torn. I don't know which villain has been taken captive at this time. I sighed. A pot-bellied man, with a mouth full of yellow teeth, staggered over. He looked at the snakeskin bag at my feet with disdain, and laughed debauchedly. Girl, can 200 mosquitoes go? I don't know where the fat man wants to take me, but looking at his decrepit appearance, and the big pig's trotters that are ready to come and pull, you can see that this person has bad intentions. A thin little girl came out of the alley and kindly reminded me, Sister, he's a bad person. He wanted to insult me just now. You run, dare to spoil my good deeds. The fat man wanted to turn his head and grab the girl, but I pulled out the big spoon used to make soup, and slammed it on his brain. Keeping him is like thunder, like a lightning strike. The big pig's trotters were so frightened that they fled. The little girl blinked with sparkling eyes. Sister, you are so majestic. The little girl's name is Rose. I followed her to the canopy with cobwebs. A sense of dilapidation comes to the face. Rose and her brother are dependent on each other. My brother works as a doorman in a big hotel in the downtown area. She learned to pick up her grandmother, and pick up some paper and plastic around to sell. A hungry grunt was heard. Rose gave me an embarrassed look. I glanced at the rudimentary fridge, and there was only the remaining white rice and a few eggs. Heat the oil. When smoke rises from the pot, I pick up the egg and knock it on the stovetop, and the broken egg liquid flows into the pot, and the fragrance spreads. Raise a large spatula and quickly slice open the egg. Pour in the overnight rice. Let it mix well with the broken egg, and stir fry over high heat. After a while, the small room was filled with the aroma of rice mixed with eggs. Sprinkle a handful of salt and add the secret shrimp paste I brought with me, and the smell of the sea suddenly hits my face. Rose's eyes stared at the wok without blinking, and her saliva almost fell to the ground. I served it on a broken plate and handed it to Rose. Eat it, sister, you're amazing. Every time my brother fried rice, it was either mushy or salty. She stuffed her mouth with rice, munched on it heavily, and gave me a thumbs up desperately. There is talent in cooking. Some people get a perfect score, and some people have 0 marks. It is not for nothing that the little girl has become thin into a bamboo pole. Lying on the couch piled high with clothes and old bedding, I couldn't sleep. I wonder where the little wolf is. He always had to hold me to sleep at this time. You won't be scared by the man in black to pee your pants, right? There was a creak, and the old door was pushed open. The blanket on his body was torn apart, and a panicked male voice sounded, You, who are you? Eartha heard the movement and hurriedly ran over. Brother, Sister Eartha saved me last night, and still won't sleep in my bed. Don't scare people. Thank you for saving my sister. My name is Barton. Very good. Barton is chubby, 22 years old, and looks 33, probably with a round face and a strong waist. It looks steady. He gave us the wontons he had brought back. Rose, brother's cooking skills won't harm you and Eartha. You don't know. My sister's fried rice is delicious. 1,000 times more delicious than you. Barton was so ashamed that he turned to me and asked me if I was looking for a job in Hong Kong City. Missing. He came to his senses. Do you have a picture? I may be able to help you. I pulled out my old phone and showed him a picture of blurry pixels like water vapor. Hey, it's familiar. Like. Rose was anxious. Brother, don't stutter at a critical moment. Like the big boss behind our hotel. Giles Gus. What? I was taken aback. The prince is very low-key, and not many people have seen him. But he's been a picky eater since he was a child, and the Gus family selects celebrity chefs from all over the world to cook for him. Later, I invited too many chefs, so I simply opened a star-rated hotel. If it weren't for Giles Gus, who often came to eat in the private room, I would have bumped into him once in a while, and I don't know what he looks like. That shouldn't be. The wolf cub is not a picky eater at all. Eat what you want. It's as easy as feeding the chickens. Rose tilted her head and thought for a moment. But when I picked up the newspaper, I saw that it said that Giles Gus had been missing for a year. Not really. When I came back a while ago, the chefs got busy and made food for him in different ways. But unfortunately they didn't move a few bites. What a waste. Gossip Weekly said that the prince was fed food for a long time when he was a child, and he almost hung up. Maybe as soon as you eat, you'll have a stress reaction. It's pathetic. Sister, you pity him. It's better to pity my brother, and I take shifts in the morning and evening, and the salary I get every month is enough to support the two of us. I have some sympathy. Barton thought about it. However, compared to the days when we were abused by our stepfather, it is good to have food and shelter. I decided to go with Barton to the hotel. For several days in a row, no one waited. Barton inquired. Giles Gus is getting married to Hedda, and I'm going to get a wedding photo shoot in Paris. Although it's not sure if Giles Gus is a wolf cub. The larynx can't help but pantothenic acid. I lost my parents when I was a child, and grew up in a fishing village with my grandmother. Grandma is gone, too. I'm left alone, until I met the little wolf. His clean and innocent eyes were like the sky washed by heavy rain, reflecting the clarity and azure of the water. For the first time, I was close to someone. He fluttered in the sea for a long time, just to catch my favorite brown crab. The little wolf is a little silly, but he drove away the fisherman who coveted my cooking skills, and wanted to marry me in, and got up late at night to help me make bone broth. My aunt was rolling on the bed in pain, and he stupidly complained to the village chief's wife, saying that someone was bullying me, and brought me a big bag of brown sugar. When I snuggled up to each other for warmth, I felt the joy of being treated with sincerity. But happiness disappeared suddenly. Hotel manager who gathered everyone into the lobby. He was arrogant tonight. Giles Gus has a banquet in the private room. If you don't want to leave, cheer me up. Barton took me to the back kitchen. Aren't you a good cook? Chef's assistant is sick. Why don't you replace him? I agreed. He put my clean cod on the grill, served it with tomato onions, and poured it with a secret sauce and olive oil, claiming that it was a delicious taste from the Mediterranean. I was absent-minded and followed manager Hu to the private room to deliver food. The moment the door opened, a face that thinks day and night sits on the throne. But his eyes were dark, and his expression was misanthropic and impatient that I had never seen. The temperament of the whole person is as cold as an iceberg. The girl in the red dress next to her, who was as beautiful as a fire, was diligently pouring water for him. Giles Gus, is our engagement party in your hotel? The man next to him, in a casual echo. Giles Gus, you've been missing for a year, and Grandpa is looking forward to holding his grandson from his hospital bed. Listen to my cousin. You and Hedda get married early. Don't let him worry about the old man. Giles Gus raised a pair of indifferent eyes. The people around him were terrified. I clung to my nails so I didn't scream. The little wolf is Giles Gus. I thought he was captured by the bad guys, and forced him to get married. It took a lot of trouble to come to Port City. If he had half a crush on me, he would have come back to me by virtue of his ability to reach the sky. Leaving a note asking me to rob my marriage is probably the last prank manager who urged me to do it. I stepped forward and did as the chef instructed, squeezing some lemon juice on top of the grilled fish to bring out the umami flavor of the fish. When Giles Gus saw me in a waiter's suit, he was stunned. A deep smile appeared on the corner of his lips. Cousin, I think you're a better match for Hedda. The eldest lady bit her lip, her eyes slightly red. Giles Gus. In my heart, I think of Kennedy Finn as my brother as you do. Kennedy Finn spoke embarrassedly. That's right. In the hearts of my grandparents. I hope that you and Hedda will go together. The old man's dying wishes. You must obey. Giles Gus' eyes stayed on me. Hedda couldn't stand it anymore. Her beautiful face was stiff, and her voice was angry. Where did you come from, slut? I don't know how to eavesdrop. Without waiting for Giles Gus to speak, manager who hurriedly pulled me who was standing in place in a daze, and ran away in a hurry. I turned around and stumbled out of the private room. Manager who reprimanded me severely. New here, why don't you understand the rules at all? Keep staring at the boss, and don't afraid of your eyeballs being gouged out. The people in the private room are worth tens of billions. Remember your identity, or get out of me immediately. He was especially angry, and scolded Barton, who came to relieve me. The palatial chandeliers are glaring. Thinking of how manager who flattered the superiors, I felt the oppression of power for the first time. Walking out of the hotel, Barton hurriedly followed. Eartha, do you see the boss? It's not the person you're looking for. I don't know how to answer. I looked up and saw the palm prints on his face, and the footprints on his trouser legs, and I was furious. Manager who beat you? He smiled innocently. Hedda is notoriously stingy. Just now you glanced at her fiancé a few times. She went to manager who to settle the score, and taught the people who brought you here a lesson. Looking at what Barton was carrying, I realized, it's a little thing. They fired you. The bottom is so humble. But don't worry, there will always be good jobs. Wait, Fang was afraid of affecting Barton, so I didn't fight back. Turning around and going back to the hotel, I added colorless, tasteless and natural diarrhea materials to Manager Huss' favorite dishes. He was seen running to the toilet 10 times before following Barton back to the cramped rental house. Barton gave me the couch and he laid the floor. I tossed and turned, and couldn't sleep. Go downstairs to breathe. After walking a distance, Giles Gus stood with his backlight, his eyes drooping slightly. Sister, are you here? I put my hand on my heart, and there was a jerk. But reason restrains emotion. I looked him straight in the eye, and after a long while, I slowly spoke. Is it fun for the rich young master to fake amnesia and tease me? He pulled me in, and his long, strong arms almost held me breathless. It's not what you think. Giles Gus' voice is less sticky and tender, and seems cold and self-controlled. He lost both parents at a young age, and was raised by his grandparents. In order to find a companion for her little grandson, the old lady took the Liu family from her mother's house. Who knows the ambition of this father and son wolf? The big one buys the people around the old man in the old house. The younger one compares with his cousin, and takes over the company behind Giles Gus' back. Hubert Finn's father had quite a few underworld brothers. Keep stumbling. My cousin is ruthless, and he arranged for me to fall into the sea. When you picked it up, you did have amnesia. I listened to the heart-pounding grievances of the wealthy and couldn't help asking, when did you regain your memory? Half a year ago. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to have a showdown with you, after the matter was over. But here you are. Didn't you bring me here on purpose? Yes. I'm afraid I'll leave you behind. And Henry, the fisherman, and Vincent, the shrimp seller, will propose to you? Why don't you contact me? When I disappeared, many people thought I was dead, and Kennedy Finn and his son took the opportunity to bribe my grandfather's cronies. At the moment, it is unknown who is credible, and who is not. Grandpa fell into a coma, and his will was known only to Grandma. But Grandma has always been partial to my mother's family, so I can only slowly figure it out. My heart softened, immediately thinking of Giles Gus' unattainable status. He took a few steps back. You're safe, then I'm gone. But he approached with a burning breath, and imprinted a kiss on my lips. Eat me clean, and don't plan to admit it. I was furious. I grew up in a fishing village, and I know what it means to be the right person. Giles Gus leaned in front of me, his cold palms interlocking with my fingers. But, without you, I would have almost died. The few months I spent with you were the happiest days of my life. I was about to say more. He looked behind him vigilantly. Wait by. The matter will be resolved soon. Under the cover of bodyguards, Giles Gus got into a luxury car that Barton had admired, disappear into the night. The news of the marriage between the two families spread all over the port city. Barton was asked to return to work at the hotel, and was given a promotion and a raise. I know, it's Giles Gus. People from the noble circle came to the feast. I still gave the chef a hand, and I ran out halfway through and heard someone talking. Hedda has been obsessed with Giles Gus for years, and today he got what he wanted. Humph, his family can't do things on the table, and the project kills people, and he bites the other party back. If it weren't for the old lady's desire to rejoice the old man, she wouldn't be in a hurry to let her grandson, who has just returned, fulfill the marriage contract. Banquet hall. Hedda, dressed in a gorgeous gown, walked up to the old lady and smiled profusely. The old lady wore a thick gold chain around her neck, and a gold bracelet on her wrist, which looked like she was not a pound or 8 taels. The aesthetic is hopeless. I turned and went back to the back kitchen. Manager who frowned and looked at me. I didn't even see what you were capable of. Giles Gus actually let you. Today is Hedda's engagement feast. If you dare to cause trouble, I want you to die an ugly death. I asked Barton about it. Manager who was promoted by Kennedy Finn, who used to be a street thug, who liked to fish for oil and water in hotels. I didn't speak, but he chattered. Giles Gus and Hedda's dishes will be delivered directly by me, so don't annoy the nobles. I'm too lazy to talk. Turned his head and added some ingredients to the orange juice, so that he could go to the toilet without stopping. Giles Gus was particularly conspicuous in a suit of hundreds of thousands, but his face was full of impatience. Coldly watched Kennedy Finn curry favor with Hedda and make the old lady laugh. I served matsutake soup to the people at the main table. Giles Gus looked down at me, with a smile in his eyes. Hedda looked at me alertly, and pointed her fingers with red nail polish at me angrily. Slut, you're it again. Why didn't Lao Hu fire you? She scolded me for not knowing what to do, and the last time she was served, she stared at Giles Gus, saying that she was going to pull my clothes. I took a few steps back and dodged it easily. The old lady was displeased. Where did you come from? The untouchables. The good ones. Hedda, get out of here. Do you hear me? I didn't hear you. I tugged at my sleeve lightly. Giles Gus smiled at the corners of his mouth. He told me about the family. Grandma was born in a small family, and it took some means to climb up to the old man, so that she was qualified to be on an equal footing with the noble woman. I hate others mentioning my origin the most in my life. Hates the house and the black, and hates the inferior people very much. She hated Giles Gus' mother's bad background, and her pickiness forced Mrs. Gus to run away from home. When Mr. Gus chased him out, the two were killed by the enemy together. Not only that, but the old lady is also extremely partial to her mother's family and grandson, Kennedy Finn. If it weren't for the old man's obstruction, he would almost give up the Gus family's property. The old lady raised her voice. I've investigated. You kidnapped Giles Gus for the year he disappeared. Cheap fisherwoman. With me for a day. Don't expect to step into Gus' house half a step. In public, she mocked me for not being worthy of Hedda's shoes. I don't laugh at my skin. Which village are you? A pig from that swells so much. Slut, you dare to scold me. The old lady was so angry that her hands trembled. I'm a very reasonable person. Whoever is good to me, I will be good to him. Whoever is wrong with me, I will fight back unceremoniously. I took advantage of the victory to pursue. Giles Gus told me that my grandmother didn't like him as a child, only my cousin Kennedy Finn. In the final analysis, it was Giles Gus' father who saw the photos of the old man's first love when he was a child, and inadvertently praised his aunt's temperament. The old lady held a grudge, and decided that her son was not filial, and that her grandson was not welcomed. But in fact, she is desperately subsidizing her mother's family under the guise of unfilial piety of her children and grandchildren. These are the things that Giles Gus slowly investigated as he grew up. Originally, he wanted to expose the family scandal. I'm afraid that Grandpa will have anything in the hands of Grandma and Hubery Finn. But no one expected that I would come to the old man's villa 2 days ago with a bowl of noodle soup. It attracted the attention of the housekeeper. When the old man and his sweetheart were together, he loved to eat the Soviet-style food she cooked. A year ago, when the old man learned that his grandson was missing, he was furious and fell unconscious. The old lady connived with Kennedy Finn to take control of Gus' house. leaving him in a suburban villa, and asking the family doctor to reassure him that he would have a breath. The housekeeper tried to use the familiar noodle soup to wake up the sleeping old man. I didn't expect it to work. The housekeeper pushed the skinny old man in a wheelchair, and slowly walked into the banquet hall. The old lady and Kennedy Finn looked at each other, their faces extremely ugly. Giles Gus stepped forward and walked up to the old man indifferently. Grandpa. The old man gently patted his grandson, with his thin and gray hands. It's good to come back. It's good to come back. He looked at the pale-faced old lady. You have done a lot of good things in the past few days, that I have been in a coma. Knowing that Giles Gus was missing, and had an inseparable relationship with Kennedy Finn, he still chose not to pursue it. He even forged the old man's handwriting, colluded with the lawyer to make a fake will, and gave all the money laid by Giles Gus' father to the Finn family. The old lady broke the jar and looked at the old man in embarrassment. Blame you. If you hadn't been thinking about that slut for the rest of your life, how would I have put my mind on my mother's house? The old man was so angry that he couldn't stop coughing. Giles Gus stood in front of him. Grandma, this is the last time I'll call you, and I'll only be able to call Agnes Finn, for the rest of my life. Bold. Agnes Finn looked at her grandfather and grandson with resentment. I'm just being nice to my mother's family, and you are deliberately angry with me. That's it. You know that they arranged for me to fall into the sea, but you don't tell me. You know that your grandfather can't give all his property to the Finn family, but you still connive at him to buy people's hearts and forge a will. If Grandpa hadn't woken up today, you'd have allowed Kennedy Finn to add something to my meal, and take advantage of my upset feelings. Fans. Arrange for women to come into my room. At that time, you can call your henchmen, put the bad things Hubery Finn did on my head, accuse me of misconduct, and then take out Grandpa's will and persuade Hedda to remarry. Right. In response to Giles Gus' condensed gaze, the old lady took a few steps back tremblingly. Shut up. You're like your damn dad, with your elbows out, bullying me, old woman. The old man let out a muffled snort. You have the face to say, I have been jealous all my life, and in order to test whether my son and I are 100% loyal to you, I have made a bunch of fame. Giles Gus' father was only 5 years old at the time, and he couldn't even tell who it was, so he intuitively answered your words, and complimented others on their good looks. But you have a small belly, under the banner of the Gus family bullying you, and you are justified in subsidizing your mother's family. You think you fooled everyone, but you've only fooled yourself. Agnes Finn shivered as she pointed to the man she had been with for years, and finally fainted. Giles Gus publicly reveals the bad things Kennedy Finn has done, trapping competitors, murdering cousins, and illegally manipulating companies. The piles and piles are enough for him to sit in prison for the rest of his life. Hedda was dumbfounded. All she knew was that she liked Giles Gus, and used Kennedy Finn like a licking dog. Seeing Kennedy Finn ruin everything, she took off her high heels, and smashed them in his face with all her might. You knew I liked Giles Gus, and you almost killed him. Kennedy Finn bit her lip and said resentfully, why can he still be the eldest young master of the Gus family, when his parents are dead? The Gus family. It's obviously my dad who helped the old man run the business, so he has today's achievements. I couldn't take it anymore, so I picked up a bowl of soup and poured it into his mouth. As an outsider knows, Gus' estate was laid by Giles Gus' father, who expanded his territory several times in his early 20s. You took advantage of his concentration on his career to do unseemly things behind his back, almost killing him, and you were ashamed to say goodbye. Boasting. I see that the donkey doesn't do anything for a day, and kicks you in the head. Before Kennedy Finn was taken away, he clutched his stomach in embarrassment and looked pained. Ouch. I guess I ate the wrong thing just now. Don't stop. I'm going to pull. He rushed to the toilet with his dirty pants in his hands, and his image was gone. Finn's family was imprisoned, and manager who was also taken away on suspicion of corruption. What the Finn family had stolen from Gus' house was returned intact. Agnes Finn is arrogant. I don't care. Unless you get the Finns out of jail, I'm going on a hunger strike. Hearing this, my first reaction was that the old man used to be too tolerant of her. If you do something wrong, you don't have to be punished. Giles Gus' face was grim. The old man's wrinkled face showed shame. Agnes Finn's father saved my life, and with that in mind, I put up with her for years. Giles Gus, Tiger poison doesn't eat children. I didn't expect her to be so cruel to you. For the sake of your grandchildren, you can send her to a suburban villa to retire and die." Suddenly, I kind of understood Giles Gus. He obviously has relatives, but he doesn't feel any love. Grandma connived at Finn's family to bully him. Grandpa felt guilty and couldn't bear to punish his old wife. And in the end, only his grandson's family was wronged. Giles Gus has been in poor health since he was a child. If it weren't for the strong heart, it would have been eaten and wiped clean long ago. Where could it grow into a strong person later? I raised my eyebrows and said, when I picked up Giles Gus, he almost died. You are generous to others and force your grandson to forgive those who have hurt him. You are simply relying on the old and selling the old, relying on yourself. The elders took care of him. You are soft-hearted towards the wicked, knowing that Agnes Finn set up a plot to frame your sweetheart back then, and poured you a mysterious soup to give you a life. Rice-cooked rice. You finally compromised, and married a wicked woman, and deserved to be left by the one you loved. The old man was in tears. Some people are decisive in big things. In the face of emotion, he is so confused. Remembering the old lady's life-saving grace, he connived at the domineering Agnes Finn to make him bad many times. I never thought that a woman would ruin 3 generations. Giles Gus stopped talking. In the face of the old man's pleading, he stopped talking and turned to leave. Giles Gus leaned back on the couch warily, unbuttoning his white shirt, his delicate collarbone looming. I walked up to him, was pulled hard, and fell to my powerful thighs. Putting my arms around the man's neck, I took a bite. Half a year ago, you contacted your henchman, right? Otherwise, Kennedy Finn's incriminating evidence would not have been collected so comprehensively. I remember a time when the little wolf used to run to the internet cafe in town. Then why did you stay in the small fishing village, and not come back to show your strength? I can't bear you. Giles Gus put his arm around me. The year I have lived with you has been the most comfortable and quiet day of my life. Grandpa was indecisive in his work, which caused the family to decline. If it weren't for my father's aggressive tactics, and hoarding capital with a thunderous momentum, the Gus family would have gone bankrupt long ago. Because of this, the enemy will come to the door. Young Giles Gus lost both parents, and his grandmother was arrogant, and she only loved her mother's Kennedy Finn. He complained to his grandfather, but in order not to be nagged by Grandma, Grandpa will only ask his grandson to forbear. When I regained my memory, I saw that you were going to bully my stupid person, and beat him with a big wooden stick. You put the stick in my hand, and say that whoever hurts me is shameless, and I don't have to give him face. I had an epiphany, and the stinger that had been hidden in my heart for years was pulled out. Since my grandparents are not good to me, why should I be tied to family affection anymore? An unhappy childhood really has to be healed in a lifetime. Giles Gus rubbed my lips lightly with his fingertips, and smiled bewilderedly. What's more, I have been dressed by you, and I just want to be your little wolf, and I don't want to go anywhere. If it weren't for Kennedy Finn's intention to rob Mr. Gus of the property he left behind, Giles Gus would still be happy. The grievances of the wealthy family made me sleepy. Giles Gus laughed and lowered his head and kissed him. Let's do something else, and you'll not be sleepy. He carried me to the bed and sweated all night. Winter in Port City came exceptionally late. I gradually became familiar with life here, and I often went to the hotel to discuss cooking techniques with the chefs, and put them on the menu. For a time, it attracted many wealthy businessmen to patronize, and the hotel in Giles Gus was full of guests. Siblings Rose and Barton have become my right-hand men, and life has been much better. Rose asked curiously, is the old lady still eating and drinking well? Think beautifully. I told Giles Gus that if I was too nice to her, I would be ashamed of my mother and father, so I went with the flow. He sent the old lady back to Finn's house. For years, the Finn family made her work as a leech, desperately sucking the blood of the Gus family. It's the return 1 or 2, but the Finn family couldn't get used to seeing the old lady lose power, and she was not treated by her own grandchildren, and dared to shout for this and that. A conflict arose someday. The old lady was pushed down from the 2nd floor. Her head hit the stairs, and she died when she was taken to the hospital. When the old man heard this, he breathed a sigh of relief. It's so good. Entangled for half a lifetime, and finally liberated. Giles Gus scoffed. The old man spent his life trying to save face, earning a good reputation for repaying his benefactor, and married an evil girl, who did not distinguish between right and wrong, affecting 3 generations of children and grandchildren. In the end, he was alone, and he knew remorse. Near the end of the year, I killed a big grass carp in the villa. The scent is appetizing. I smiled and took a piece and fed it to Giles Gus. In the past, during the Chinese New Year, my grandmother liked to make this smoked fish the most when she was alive. Is it delicious? He took a bite and nodded in satisfaction. The old man looked at the plate of smoked fish in distraction, and muttered, "At the beginning, my crush came from the same place as you. She was kind, beautiful, virtuous and generous. It was I who failed her heart, and made her go away." Recalling the past, the old man beat his chest. Giles Gus and I were indifferent. As a human being, he hesitates when he makes the most taboo choice, and regrets it after making a choice. If the old man had been ruthless enough to send away Agnes Finn, who had set up a game to fascinate him, he might not be able to have a good story with his sweetheart. And if the old man marries Agnes Finn, he no longer thinks about his sweetheart, and hides his photos in his arms. Agnes Finn won't go berserk, and fight against her long-gone rival. Giles Gus later inquired about the woman, who later married a gentle husband, and the whole family was happy, blessed for a lifetime. Looking at the family photos of 3 generations of his sweetheart, the old man cried tears. The year after I got married, Giles Gus and I gave birth to a daughter. The old man did not survive the torture of cancer, and died soon after meeting his granddaughter. I overheard that after her family went bankrupt, Hedda became a high-level courtesan. She hated being implicated by Kennedy Finn, and found someone to take revenge on him, in prison and beat him half to death. The attack was too ruthless, resulting in high paraplegia. Hedda was found and had to go to jail. Giles Gus purged the unjust and took the company to the next level. It's not that no one has talked about it. The big man in the Hong Kong circle, who covers the sky with one hand, has married a low-status fisherman. But the people who said these things had their family business robbed by Giles Gus. I'm a little helpless. This guy is good at everything, but he is very good at protecting calves. No one could have imagined that Giles Gus, who was resolute outside, would come home like a clingy little wolf, often coquettish to me. Let me cook for him. I also carried forward the recipes and made Gus Restaurant, a living sign of Hong Kong City. The ladies in the city were envious, and thought that I had trapped Giles Gus with my cooking skills. I laughed and didn't say anything. Every year, 30% of the profit is used to support orphans who are unfortunately shipwrecked in the sea. Giles Gus took my hand. If it weren't for your help, I'm afraid I wouldn't be where I am today. Thankfully, I met you. I shook his hand back, and drank the cheeks of the flower carving, bringing a hot flush. How are you going to repay it? Isn't it enough to make a promise? Then have another baby? No, I drank today, regenerate another day, and make a promise today. A beautiful room. The sound of rain is ticking, like a happy overture that never stops. The end.